Okay, I mentioned in a past part that the first church that we went to as children, or that I went to anyway, was the Cascades Baptist Church, as did Penny, and I think Lori might have too. And this would have been before John was born. I was only probably 7 or 8. And I think I ought to make it clear that my mom, though she was a very strong believer and had strong religious values and high moral values, did not go to church when I was growing up. Um, and neither did my dad, but she certainly encouraged us kids to go to church. And so our church experience growing up was basically going to church with friends and relatives. And the Cascade Baptist Church was Penny's friends. She started making friends when she was 8 or 9 years old. And then comes the next part, comes the relatives part, because that's when we started going to the Gospel Hall, because at some point my Aunt Fran or Aunt Mary or Aunt Alice, one of them, must have asked Mom and Dad if they could take us to church and take us to Sunday school, and Mom and Dad agreed. They must have agreed because we went. And I remember them picking us up and taking us and going, and I remember Sunday school and learning about David from my great cousin Nancy, and Joanne taught a class, and then I was in Joyce's class, which was Aunt Mary's daughter, and I forgot what she taught us about, but I do remember that they taught the Sunday school classes. And I don't remember whose card I wrote in. I think I must have Aunt Fran sometimes. But I know one time I do definitely remember was riding home in my Aunt Alice's car. Her and her husband, Uncle Braden, had a beautiful, at the time, Cadillac. Probably was like a 68 or 69, but it was new at the time because that was about what year it was. And I remember that was my first experience with power anything. They had power windows and I think power seats, but power windows is what I remember because they were a rarity back then. It was just crank windows where you roll them up, roll them down. So that made an impression on me. And speaking of my Aunt Alice, one thing I digress a little bit because we were talking about this with my brother, and that was they had started this thing where somebody, I can't remember if it was Aunt Alice or my grandma, but one of them, somehow or other, they got them gloves, or somebody got them gloves for Christmas, and there was some controversy whether it was supposed to be Aunt Alice's gloves or my grandma's gloves. And so my grandma kept trying to say, no, you take the gloves. And Aunt Alice said, you take the gloves. And finally, one of them insisted and had the other one take the gloves. And they thought that was the end of it. But then on the person's next birthday, say if it was Aunt Alice that took the gloves, on my grandma's birthday, she opened a present that came in the mail from Aunt Alice. And lo and behold, it was the gloves. And so guess what? On Aunt Alice's birthday, she would open a package and my grandma had sent her the gloves back. And that went on for years, sending the gloves back and forth, and became a running joke in the family. And I don't know when it must have been around the 2008, 2000 era when that ended. And I'm not sure how it ended and who ended up with the gloves, But anyway, I thought that was interesting. I also thought it was interesting, one more thing I'll point out with the Gospel Hall, was that they did not keep Christmas, at least the commercial part of Christmas. They wouldn't have Christmas trees or Santa Claus or anything like that, but they did have what they call in December a Sunday school treat, because they wanted to have something special for the children. And the final thing I remember about the Gospel Hall growing up was they didn't believe in having TVs in their home. So my Aunt Fran didn't have a TV when I went over to their house because they thought that was too worldly or secular. But that changed over the years because I did notice in later years they or their kids did end up with televisions in their home. But I just thought I'd bring that out.